Mercedes GLE is a large luxury SUV with a more dynamic look and feel than its M-Class predecessor. Beautifully made, quietly capable, and state-of-the-art in almost every conceivable way, it keeps its brand at the forefront of this segment. If you only need 5 seats from a car of this kind and want a prestigiously badged great all-rounder, it's a strong contender.
Think of all the reasons not to like a large luxury SUV 4x4. First, poor performance, huge tax liabilities, wobbly handling, yet middle-class motorists still love them, patiently sure that one day the brands involved will bring us something better. Something perhaps like this, the Mercedes GLE. Now, you may not be familiar with the model name, but if you're a buyer in this market, a car in this segment with a Mercedes badge on the bonnet should be very familiar indeed. The old M-Class this GLE is based upon was for nearly 2 decades the world's most popular luxury 4x4, with over 1.5 million examples sold as it paved a path that other plush SUVs like BMW's X5 and Porsche's Cayenne would quickly follow. Rivals like these offered buyers a more dynamic interpretation of what a vehicle of this kind could be, but Mercedes fought back with the lighter, more agile third-generation M-Class launched in 2012, the car that forms the basis for this GLE model. Now, the change of name brings this car into line with other products in the Mercedes SUV range. So it sits at the heart of the large section of this segment, just above the more compact Audi Q5 or BMW X3 size GLC model, and just below the Range Rover size GLS. As you might be aware, cars in this GLE's class tend to fall into 2 categories in their approach to likely buyers. 7-seat practicality is favoured by SUVs like Land Rover's Discovery, Audi's Q7 and Volvo's XC90, which is one way to go. As an alternative, contenders like BMW's X5, Porsche's Cayenne and Volkswagen's Touareg give you only 5 seats but offer more dynamic looks and agile handling. And it's into this second group that Mercedes has chosen to slot this 5-seat GLE model. Now, the brand bridles at accusations that what we have here is merely a lightly facelifted version of that old Mark III model M-Class, and with some justification. After all, as well as smarter looks, this GLE gets a completely fresh 9-speed auto gearbox and a clever dynamic select handling control system, so you can set the car up to suit the way that you want to drive. Under the bonnet, all the engines are significantly more efficient, and there's the option of clever plug-in petrol-electric hybrid technology for the first time, plus much improved safety provision and impressive levels of media connectivity. There's even an additional and completely separate sporty GLE coupe body style if you want it. Here, though, we're going to be concentrating on the standard GLE body shape and deciding whether it can continue Mercedes' impressive track record in this segment. Let's find out. In our experience, sport utility vehicle makers in the large luxury segment are apt to get hung up on one or other of those 2 words. So you get plenty of sport without a huge amount of utility, as with Porsche's Cayenne or BMW's X5, or utility without much of the sport, Land Rover Discovery or Volvo's XC90 perhaps. In between those 2 extremes lie cars of this kind that are neither one thing nor the other. Examples of that including the Lexus RX, the Jeep Grand Cherokee and the Volkswagen Touareg. It was in this rather grey area that Mercedes M-Class models of all kinds used to sit. Though with the 3rd generation version of 2012, there were signs that the Stuttgart brand was at last getting a handle on what it might take to make a car of this kind a little more rewarding to drive. Its progress has been continued by this GLE, the sharper-looking, more responsive large luxury SUV that the old M-Class has now become. Now, GLE buyers don't get a fundamentally different car. A completely new model generation would be needed for that. But Mercedes has usefully embellished what it had, not only with sportier looks, but also with genuine engineering upgrades. So mainstream models get a much more sophisticated 9-speed automatic gearbox, and across the range there's a new Dynamic Select vehicle dynamics system, so you can set the car up to suit the way you want to drive. What aren't new are the mainstream diesel engines that most GLE buyers will choose. These, as usual, transmitting torque to the tarmac via a capable 4MATIC permanent four-wheel drive system that on mainstream models splits power equally between front and rear axles. The entry point for the lineup, as before, is provided by a 4-cylinder, 204 brake horsepower, 2.1-litre unit used in the entry-level GLE 250D, which develops 500 newton-meters of torque and gets to 62 miles an hour in 8.6 seconds en route to 132 miles an hour. Alternatively, there's the 3-litre V6 diesel used in the 258 brake horsepower GLE 350D variant that we're trying here. A version that improves those performance figures to 7.1 seconds and 140 miles an hour, but more importantly, ups the torque figure to a lusty 620 newton meters. That's enough to raise the brake towing capacity from 2,900 kilograms to 3,500 kilograms. Now, if you're amongst the few SUV buyers who really don't like fueling from the black pump, then there are also various petrol-powered options on offer. The GLE 450 AMG uses a 367 brake horsepower 3-litre V6 with oral fireworks that'll be embellished by a raughty-sounding AMG sports exhaust system as you accelerate to 62 miles an hour in 5.7 seconds on the way to a restricted 155 miles an hour top speed. Alternatively, much the same 3-litre petrol V6 gets a more frugally minded remit in the GLE 500e plug-in hybrid model, delivering technology that's new for Mercedes in this segment. Here, that petrol unit works with a 116 brake horsepower electric motor paired to an 8.8 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery, creating an impressive combined system output of 442 brake horsepower. That's enough to create the most potent hybrid in the luxury SUV sector, one able to storm to 62 miles an hour in 5.3 seconds on the way to 152 miles an hour. Switch into the drive system's E mode and a charged up 500e should give you a battery-powered driving range of 18.5 miles, although it'll be somewhat less than that if you try and replicate this variant's quoted all-electric top speed of 80 miles an hour. If you don't feel the need to be so ecologically responsible when it comes to a model in this class, and you're prepared to pay serious money up front, then probably nothing but the top version of this car, the exotic Mercedes-AMG GLE 63S variant, will do. Here you get a sharper shifting 7-speed AMG SpeedShift Plus 7G-tronic auto gearbox that's capable of rifle crack changes that'll fully exercise the substantial chunk of AMG real estate that lies beneath that bonnet. It's a 585 brake horsepower V8 bi-turbo petrol engine with, wait for it, 760 newton meters on tap. I mean, to be honest, I'm still trying to process that last figure. After all, a Lamborghini Aventador can only rustle up 690 newton meters of pulling power. The result in this Merc is a massive amount of performance instantly on demand. The spec sheet tells me that this top variant will accelerate to 62 miles an hour in just 4.2 seconds, but that doesn't even come close to telling you how rapid this car would feel in the real world. It's supercar quick, more rapid than, say, an Aston Martin V8 Vantage when it comes to overtaking something. Plus, it also makes a very nice noise. You don't get that, of course, from this more mainstream 350D diesel variant, but there's still quite enough performance on offer to allow investigation into whether this really is the more dynamically orientated luxury SUV that the sharper styling promises. Throw a standard version into a fast, twisting set of bends, and you might wonder. Though body roll isn't excessive for a car of this kind, there's enough to make you fully aware of this model's weighty, high-sided demeanour, and it doesn't help that the so-called direct steer, speed-sensitive steering isn't especially direct in the way it responds. You can improve things a bit, though, once you get the hang of using the Dynamic Select vehicle dynamics system that I mentioned earlier. It's one of those setups that enables you to alter the steering, the throttle response and the gear shift timings of your car via various driving modes. Plus there's adaptive damping that allows Dynamic Select to tweak the ride quality too. Whether your GLE has the conventional steel springs fitted to the base 250D model or the sophisticated and far preferable Airmatic air suspended package that's optional on that base variant and standard elsewhere across the range. You access the various Dynamic Select settings via this rotary dial that falls to hand on this panel between the seats. With the diesel models, there are 5 options, and you have to go with one of them because, unfortunately, there's no set and forget auto mode that would make all the choices for you. Sport sharpens things up nicely, while Comfort allows the air suspension where fitted to smooth away the worst urban potholes, although still in a rather firmly orientated manner. There's a slippery mode for icy weather or light off-road work, and an individual setting that claims to be able to allow you to individually alter different parameters. Although in practice it's slightly limiting in that it doesn't allow you to separate steering and suspension adjustment. The high-performance petrol-powered GLA variants add an extra Sport Plus option that more firmly sharpens responses and introduces a popping, crackling engine overrun sound that suits the extrovert AMG attitude. Plus, you get a lovely screen on the central display that visualises the longitudinal and lateral acceleration, plus the steering angle in a brilliantly detailed graphic. Whatever GLE variant you decide upon, the key dynamic extra cost feature we'd suggest you add is Mercedes' clever active curve roll stabilisation system, a setup that'll add value whichever Dynamic Select mode you happen to want. Select the comfort setting, for example, and active stabilisers soak up bumpy surface undulations much better than the Airmatic suspension system would otherwise on its own. Those stabilisers reduce body roll too, considerably so when you switch into the sport mode. It all makes a big difference, even if you're off-road. Ah, yes, off-road capability. Well, we should mention that because, unlike some of its competitors, this car certainly has some. The permanent 4MATIC four-wheel drive system I mentioned earlier is, like most rival systems, an intelligent setup which works with 4 ETS traction control to push either more or less power towards front or rear as required to suit the conditions you're driving over. Now, that's great for farm tracks and slippery roads, but it won't be enough for gnarlier stuff where, for a start, you'll be limited by a ride height that's a relatively low 202mm if you happen to have chosen a base GLE 250D model riding on standard suspension. As I mentioned earlier though, most GLEs come with Airmatic air springs, and with that setup you have the option to raise the ride height up to 255mm. Going further than that requires specification of the extra cost off-road package that we're trying here. This gives the Dynamic Select vehicle dynamic system an additional off-road plus mode that focuses all the functionality of the car for off-piste use. Plus, if you end up with your GLE on terrain you probably shouldn't have ventured onto in the first place, then you'll be glad of additional off-road package features like a low-range gearbox, an under-engine guard and a centre differential lock. Plus, there are 3 additionally selectable off-road ride heights that allowed ground clearances to be raised by 30, 60 or 90mm. So if necessary, you can raise the ride height to as much as 285mm, and that's enough to allow you to wade through water up to 600mm deep. So equipped, your GLE could have an approach angle of as much as 30 degrees, a departure angle of as much as 29 degrees, and a breakover angle of as much as 22 degrees. Test any of that out though, and you'd be being braver than we would be in a car worth this much. This GLE is certainly a more purposeful looking thing than its M-Class predecessor, and it needed to be. If you're not going to provide 7-seat practicality in a large luxury SUV of this sort, then you need to have dynamic looks and a menacing overtaking presence instead. And that is something that, in truth, previous M-Class models never really had. Fortunately, though, for Mercedes, that now appears to have been effectively integrated into this car's DNA. You especially appreciate that here up front, where this restyled bonnet features twin power domes, reflecting the sportier design language now favoured by this Stuttgart brand's stylists. And further down, these huge gaping air intakes emphasise the more upright sports grille that now features twin louvers and is flanked by sleeker headlamps featuring the piercing LED technology of Mercedes' intelligent light system. In short, there's a want one feel to this SUV that its predecessors never had. View the car in profile, and those familiar with Mercedes' offerings in this segment might note that far fewer changes have been made over the original Mark III model M-Class that this GLE draws upon. The brand wants us to believe that this is intentional. This characteristically angled rear C-pillar and the harmoniously integrated rear side window behind it have been an integral part of Mercedes' design in this segment for the last 2 decades, and some sense of styling continuity is obviously useful in a car with this kind of market heritage. Hence also the familiar strong shoulder line and these sharp lower and mid-level creases. GLE model line differences are limited to restyled front wings and the revised 19, 20 or 21-inch light alloy wheels that now complement the more sporting stance. The rear styling updates have been equally cautious. Smarter tail lights feature LED technology that gives a more distinctive nighttime signature, and redesigned tailpipe embellishers are now more smoothly integrated into the restyled bumper, under which is a 3-dimensionally styled chrome look underride guard. So, you're getting the idea. In evolving its luxury SUV contender into this GLE, guys, Mercedes has spent its money where it matters. So first impressions are of a sportier, more dynamic car, both when first you see it from the front and when you take a seat here behind the wheel. In place of the dull, conventional, family-orientated layout of the old M-Class, you're sat more purposefully in front of a sportier, 3-spoke, leather-stitched wheel. And through it you glimpse a pair of more deeply cowled dials separated by the colour multi-information display that Mercedes uses on most of its other models. Another feature that'll be familiar for buyers used to other luxury cars from this brand is this 8-inch Command Online colour infotainment screen, which looks like a detachable touchscreen tablet and sits proud of these 2 more prominent central vents. Its functionality is primarily controlled by what at first glance looks as if it might be the auto gear stick, and that's actually a stalk off the steering column. Instead, this rather futuristic-looking protuberance has been borrowed from the S-Class and actually works rather well once you get used to it. There's the usual rotary controller dial that swivels, slides and pushes, but here Mercedes has gone a step further, this higher surface turning out to be a touchpad that permits letters, numbers and special characters to be handwritten. Although in this right-hand drive model, there is the awkwardness of having to do that with your left hand. As for the command screen and its functionality, well, for us, that's one of the nicest things about this car, with sophisticated graphics that make those of every other rival system look dull and cheap. Particularly nice are the vehicle sections that gives you G-force and steering angle displays in real time and a beautifully crafted screen with extra virtual dials for temperature, torque and voltage. There's all the usual infotainment stuff too, of course, with 3D mapping, live traffic information, use of Mercedes-Benz apps and in-car internet access for things like Facebook and web radio. In addition, the package provides Linguatronic voice control and a 10GB music register, plus access to news and weather reports. And the screen also displays the impressive optional 360-degree camera system that many buyers will want. So, the technology is in place, as is most of the premium quality you'd expect from the luxury SUV of this price. No, you don't get the exquisite attention to detail you get in an S-Class, but specified correctly, it can feel very high-end indeed, especially if you pay extra for the stitched quilted leather of the plusher Designo line models or the piano black lacquered finishes that we got here. This is a treatment that nicely sets off this slatted storage area cover at the base of the centre console. It slides back to reveal 2 cup holders that on plusher Designo line models will even cool or warm your drinks. Just behind sits the chromed rotary dials with the various off-road options and the dynamic selective vehicle dynamic system. Practical touches include a decently sized glove box and space for your sunglasses above the windscreen. Plus there are spacious door pockets and this twin-lidded leather-topped stowage box between the seats, inside which you'll find the connections for all manner of media connectivity. Time to pull back one of the wide opening doors and take a seat in the rear. Where you'll find a cabin with ample head and legroom that'll certainly feel luxurious enough for a couple of adults, even if they're 6-footers. Especially given that the backrest can be reclined rearwards for greater comfort on longer journeys. Now, the bench here hasn't been shaped to comfortably accommodate a third passenger, but thanks to this being one of the widest cabins in the class, transporting one won't be too uncomfortable an experience, provided that the journey isn't too long. We would want to get a car like this one with the premium pack panoramic glass roof fitted. This feature lightening what would otherwise be a rather dark space. Time to take a look out back and raise the standard electrically operated tailgate. As we've said, Mercedes has elected here not to offer a third row of floor-integrated fold-out seats, one benefit of which you'd think would be a lower sill height that would make it easier to get heavy luggage in. For some reason, that advantage doesn't appear to have been realised here, but once you have lugged items over the loading lip, then the news is mostly all good. Now, one of the advantages that this car holds over its BMW X5 arch rival is that it offers you 40 litres more boot space, the 690 litre total proving to be class-leading. There's about 10% more room here than you get in a Porsche Cayenne, nearly 20% more than you get in a Volkswagen Touareg, and nearly 50% more room than you get in something like a Lexus RX 450h. The Lexus's issue lies in its need to package in a bulky set of batteries, a problem that also afflicts this GLE in its 500e plug-in hybrid guise. Here, boot capacity falls enormously to just 480 litres. The standard models, though, are, as I've suggested, well provided for in terms of cargo capacity, with part of the total provided by this useful underfloor compartment into which you can stow away items you might want to keep out of the sight of prying eyes. However, we would point out that the only reason that this space exists is that Mercedes declines to provide this car with any kind of spare wheel, not even one of the space-saving variety. Amazingly, you can't even add one in as an option on the two mainstream models, which means that in the event of a puncture, you'll be stuck with a tyre repair kit or waiting for a rescue service. Now, this is a state of affairs we think is unacceptable on any kind of SUV. That aside, though, we're impressed by this car's emphasis on practicality. After all, you can flatten the backrest and free up as much as 2,010 litres. That's nearly 140 litres more than that rival X5 model can provide. GLE models sit mainly in the £50,000 to £60,000 price bracket, although you'll need to find around £65,000 for the 500e 4MATIC plug-in hybrid version and around £95,000 for the Mercedes-AMG 63S 4MATIC performance petrol model. In this film, we're primarily considering the standard body style, but Mercedes is also offering a sportier coupe version of this SUV, offered at a model-for-model premium of around £4,400 over this more practically shaped version. The vast majority of buyers will be looking at the two conventional diesel GLE models, both of which are fitted with 4MATIC permanent four-wheel drive and the brand's latest 9G-tronic 9-speed automatic gearbox. Bear in mind that the entry-level 4-cylinder 2.1-litre GLE 250D variant doesn't include the Airmatic air suspension with adaptive damping package that, in our view, really makes this car. Now, for that, you'll need to find the premium of around £7,000 £5,000 that Mercedes requires to upgrade you into the next model up. This 6-cylinder, 3-litre GLE 350D derivative. The sporty AMG line trim level that we're trying here is probably the one that you're going to want, although the base GLE 250D gets the option of cheaper sport spec, while further up the range you can pay premium prices for ritzy Designo line trim if you really want to make your car feel special. And rivals? Well, for simplicity's sake, we'll initially concentrate on comparisons with the two diesel GLE variants that most potential customers will be looking at. And the most obvious competitor here is BMW's X5, a car that initially appears to be a little cheaper than this one. An X5 xDrive 25D around £2,500 less than an equivalent GLE 250D, and an X5 xDrive 30D around £6,500 less than a comparable GLE 350D. Mercedes points out, though, that if you equalise the spec, then the difference between the two cars narrows considerably. You have to pay a lot extra on an X5 xDrive 30D, for example, for the air suspension and adaptive damping systems that GLE 350D buyers get as standard. It might also be worth pointing out that this Mercedes does have a significantly larger boot. As for other key rivals, well, we think the closest one in terms of 5-seat body style and comparable diesel power is probably Volkswagen's Touareg. Now, a base Touareg is around £5,000 less than a GLE 250D, while the higher-powered version of that Volkswagen that competes with the GLE 350D would save you about £10,000. Most of that saving, though, would evaporate with lower residuals when the time came to sell. And, again, you'd be getting a smaller boot. An observation that also applies to Porsche's Cayenne. Now, Cayenne engines tend to be more powerful than GLE ones, so direct comparisons with that car are difficult, unless you're looking at the base diesel version of that Porsche, which will save you around £6,000 over a directly comparable GLE 350D. Again, though, much of that difference will be accounted for once you've specified that Cayenne to a Mercedes standard. Are there other options? Well, not many. Jeep's Grand Cherokee would save you around £8,000 over a GLE 250D, but it doesn't really have the quality or the badge equity on offer here, and it costs a lot more to run. The Range Rover Sport, meanwhile, uses more powerful engines in mainstream models, so it isn't really directly comparable, and in any case, it's much more expensive. You might, in this segment, perhaps more readily think of cars like Land Rover's Discovery, Volvo's XC90 and Audi's Q7. These, though, are 7-seat SUVs, and because this Mercedes only seats 5, they don't tend to feature especially highly on a typical GLE buyer's radar, especially given that they're slightly bigger, heavier and clunkier to drive. If you are prepared to consider these three contenders, then you'll probably find that they will save you a small amount. In theory, a Discovery could save you up to around £7,500 over this Merc. But choose a version more comparably spec to GLE levels, and you're looking at a saving over the GLE 250D version of this Mercedes that'll probably be more like £2,000 to £3,000. And that's about the same as you'd save over this variant by choosing a Volvo XC90 in 2-litre D5 diesel, guys. A base Audi Q7, meanwhile, is around £1,500 less than a GLE 250D, while the higher-powered version of that Audi that competes with the GLE 350D would save you about £5,000. Now, if you're attracted to the plug-in hybrid GLE 500e variant of this Mercedes and not put off by the £65,000 price tag, then you will find that the luxury SUV segment offers similar options, but nothing quite the same. There are non-plug-in hybrids, a Lexus RX 450h at just under £50,000 and a Range Rover Sport SDV6 HEV at around £85,000. But these seem rather old tech now, and they don't give you the important all-electric commuting range that plug-in hybrids offer. You could get that and save around £13,000 with BMW's X5 xDrive 40e, around £5,000 with Volvo's XC90 T8, and around £3,000 with Porsche's Cayenne SE Hybrid. But in all these cases, you'd be getting significantly less power. Audi's Q7 e-tron is comparably priced with a GLE 500e, but there you've got a diesel electric power plant rather than the petrol electric unit that you get in this Mercedes. And that means that a Q7 e-tron would give you slightly less performance. Now, I'll finish this section with a quick word on the top GLE, the Mercedes-AMG 63S high performance version. This £95,000 model only really has two direct rivals. A supercharged 5-litre V8 Range Rover Sports SVR is priced very comparably, while a BMW X5M costs around £90,000. Enough with the comparisons. Let's assume that you've decided that a GLE is exactly what you want, and you now want to know just how generous Mercedes has been with the standard spec. Well, let's take a little look at the detail on that. I have already mentioned some of the key items that come as standard. You would expect four-wheel drive, an automatic gearbox and a dynamic select style vehicle dynamic system from a car like this. But features like LED headlamps, an active parking assist system with reversing camera that steers you into spaces, and adaptive high beam assist headlamps that automatically dip themselves at night would normally be expensive options. Not here. With a base GLE 250D Sport variant, you also get 19-inch alloy wheels, heated front seats, a keyless go starting system, Speedtronic cruise control, privacy glass, auto headlamps and wipers, roof rails, headlamp washers, power folding mirrors, a powered tailgate, thermatic climate control and man-made Artico leather trim. Disappointingly though, given that this is a capable SUV, there's no spare wheel provided, only one of those irritating tyre sealant kits. To this tally, the AMG line trim level that we're trying here also adds larger 20-inch AMG alloy wheels, an AMG body styling pack, an AMG sports steering wheel, ambient lighting, stainless steel pedals, sports seats and a sports braking system. Go for the petrol-powered GLE 450 AMG model and you also get a meaner-looking night styling package, stiffer suspension, a sports exhaust system, more powerful brakes and an extra Sports Plus mode on the Dynamic Select Drive Dynamic system. It's a very complete specification, but with a list price approaching six figures, you'd expect the top Mercedes-AMG GLE 63S petrol model to improve on it, as of course it does. Here you get full AMG-themed interior and exterior trim, the cockpit featuring a 4.4-inch AMG instrument cluster that lights up in red. Driving stuff includes Airmatic-based AMG Sport suspension, a sharper AMG SpeedShift Plus 7G-tronic auto gearbox and high-performance braking system with red calipers. And then finally, two further features that you can incidentally also pay extra for on the lesser GLE 450 AMG model, namely huge 21-inch wheels and an active curve system that compensates for roll through the corners. Now, whatever your choice of engine in this GLE, the price you pay will also include the Mercedes Command Online system with media interface and touchpad, accessible via an 8-inch colour infotainment screen. This gives you an HDD hard disk navigation system with 3D display to which you can send routes you've compiled on your home PC via Google Maps. The command setup also gives you live traffic information, use of Mercedes-Benz apps and in-car internet access for things like Facebook and web radio. Plus, the package provides Linguatronic voice control, a 10GB music register, access to news and weather reports and connectivity for SD cards, USB sticks, aux-in items and iPods. The command system also gives you a smartphone integration package that's been developed to allow use of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto functionality. Via this, users get access to the neat MirrorLink system that duplicates the functionality of their handsets onto the central media display screen and allows use of Apple's Siri voice control as well as of selected apps like Stitcher Radio and Spotify. Plus, with the command system, there are all the benefits of the clever Mercedes Me remote online services package. It costs very little extra and can do an awful lot, allowing you to monitor many aspects of your Mercedes from your PC or smartphone. Almost everything, in fact, from its tyre pressures to its washer fluid level. With Mercedes Me, you can lock or unlock your car from wherever you are, summon breakdown assistance, liaise with your dealer on servicing, and even locate your GLA's position if you've forgotten where you parked it. On to options. Now, on the base GLE 250D, as we were saying earlier, you don't get the Airmatic air suspension with adaptive damping package that's fitted to the more powerful variants. You can add this into the base variant though by specifying an optional dynamic package that also includes a smart set of 21-inch AMG wheels. You probably won't want to get these muddy, but Mercedes does expect around 10% of GLE buyers to regularly want to take their cars off a paved surface. For these people, the extra cost off-road package will be essential. This gives you an extra off-road plus mode on the dynamic select vehicle dynamic system that focuses all the functionality of the car for off-piste use. Plus, for really gnarly terrain, you get a low-range gearbox, an under-engine guard, a centre differential lock, and 3 additionally selectable off-road ride heights. On to more luxury-orientated niceties. Across the range, Mercedes offers an extra cost premium pack that gives you features like a panoramic electric glass roof, aluminium look running boards, 360-degree camera system and a memory feature for the electric seats. If you want to go further, then there's a premium plus package option which sees the brand include all of these things along with the thumping 14-speaker 830-watt Harman Kardon Logic 7 surround sound setup and their keyless go comfort system, so you can unlock and start the car without taking the key from your pocket. The ultimate choice, though, if you're looking at a mainstream variant of this car, is to go the whole hog and trade up to that plusher Designo line trim level I mentioned earlier. Yes, doing so adds around 15% to the price of your GLE, but in return, you get a more exclusive feeling car, complete with all the premium pack features I just mentioned, plus a unique interior featuring black poplar wood trim and exclusive upholstery for more supportive multi-contour climate-controlled seats that have a massage function and are heated in the back. The Designo line variants also get a door closing aid, upgraded thermotronic climate control and our favourite touch, temperature controlled front cup holders that keep your drinks either hot or cool. Well, in terms of other options, we'd want to look at the glorious 14-speaker 1200-watt Bang & Olufsen Beosound AMG sound system and possibly the entertainment package with its DVD player, TV tuner and pair of 8-inch screens for rear seat passengers. Plus, of course, you can spend ages agonising over the creation of a bespoke interior, selecting between carbon fibre or piano black lacquered trim, or maybe wood in poplar, ash or eucalyptus. As for the exterior, well, one option is to add a night package that gives you 20 or 21-inch AMG wheels along with bodywork trim elements in high-gloss black and chrome. On the top 63S V8 AMG model, you can specify 2 further things, a carbon fibre engine cover and an AMG performance package that gives you an even rortier exhaust system, an increase in top speed to 175 miles an hour and driver training at the AMG Driving Academy. Practical options include a retractable tow bar and the usual racks for bikes, skis and snowboards. On to safety, where the standard specification across the range includes, well, an awful lot. We'll begin with the familiar stuff. And that means dual-stage airbags for driver and front passenger, side bags in the front seats, a pelvis bag and a knee bag for the driver, and window bags to cover all occupants. There are also ISOFIX child seat fastenings, a pedestrian-friendly active bonnet, and Neck Pro anti-whiplash head restraints. To try and ensure that none of this stuff is ever needed, you do, of course, get the usual electronic assistance for traction and stability control. There's also ABS with brake assist and an adaptive braking system that flashes the brake lights in emergency stops and keeps the discs dry in wet weather. Plus tyre pressure monitoring, a traffic sign assist feature that pictures road signs as you pass them and displays them for you on the dash, and a hill start assist function that stops you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. The standard safety kit tally doesn't stop there either. I could tell you about an attention assist system that profiles you in the first few minutes of every journey and then continues to measure your responses, warning you to stop for a break if control reactions suggest you're getting a little drowsy. Then there's pre-safe technology that braces the car for a crash by tensioning the seatbelts and closing the windows. Crosswind assist setup that detects and compensates for sudden gusts of wind at speed. Also collision prevention assist plus, which warns you if you're getting too close to the vehicle in front and will automatically reduce speed and brake if you don't respond. And DSR, downhill speed regulation, that off-road can ease you down slippery slopes. You also get LED headlamps that turn with the corners and feature an adaptive high beam assist plus system that will automatically dips them for you at night in the face of oncoming traffic. Oh, and there's an eCall emergency call system built into the Command Online infotainment setup that, in the event of an accident, will automatically call for rescue help, alerting the necessary services to your exact GPS location. And that could be a lifesaver. Is it really necessary to go further? Well, some buyers think so, and for them, Mercedes offers its extra-cost Driving Assistance Plus package, which includes 5 further safety elements borrowed from the brand's larger S-Class saloon for use in this car. Now, if you like the sound of the way that Collision Prevention Assist Plus autonomous braking system I was just talking about looks out for you, then you'll like the way that this Driving Assistance Plus package's extra pre-safe brake and Distronic Plus with steer assist and stop-and-go pilot elements improve upon that functionality. These additional features combine to also give you autonomous braking at higher speeds, with the bonus of specific pedestrian detection at lower ones. In addition, the Distronic Plus element develops your GLE's cruise control functionality, automatically keeping you a safe distance to the traffic ahead, with the system even seamlessly stopping the car and then moving it off again in tailback situations. I mean, it's all very clever. As for the 3 other Driving Assistance Plus package elements, well, we like the idea of BAS Plus with Junction Assist, a clever system which prompts you to brake in hazardous situations and adds extra brake pressure if you're a bit too tentative. Also working at junctions and roundabouts to avoid possible collisions from the side. Then there's Active Lane Keeping Assist. That's there to stop dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway. And Active Blind Spot Assist, that at speeds stops you from dangerously pulling out to overtake in front of another driver. The Federal Office of Statistics reckons that the driver of a Mercedes is 9.6% less likely to have an accident than the driver of a car of any other brand. Looking at what's on offer here, you can begin to see why. Would we ever have imagined a few years ago that a 2.2-tonne luxury SUV of this kind will be able to better the fuel consumption of a 1.6-litre Ford Focus? Almost certainly not. Yet that's exactly what this GLE model can manage in entry-level 250D diesel guys. That variant's 155 grams per kilometre CO2 figure can't quite be thought of in those terms, but it's still very nearly class-leading, thanks to an AdBlue urea injection system that reduces NOx emissions. Other contributory factors towards this showing include the sleek shape, the efficient electromechanical power steering, and the usual start-stop system that cuts the engine at the lights or in traffic when you don't need it. There's also a consumption screen on the Command infotainment system that shows you your recent progress in frugality. Even the much pokier GLE 350D 6-cylinder variant that we're trying here could still be cheaper to run than many smaller cars. You're talking 42.8 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 174 grams per kilometre of CO2, which, to give you some perspective, is almost exactly the same kind of showing you get from a comparable Porsche Cayenne or Volkswagen Touareg, if not quite as good as an equivalent BMW X5. We should point out, though, that GLE buyers prioritising running cost returns actually shouldn't be considering a diesel engine at all, but petrol power. Not the petrol power characterised by the performance-minded 367 brake horsepower 450 AMG version. Of course, this will demand deeper pockets, delivering 32.8 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 199 grams per kilometre of CO2. Match a very similar version of this variant's 3-litre V6 petrol engine with a 116 brake horsepower electric motor paired to an 8.8 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery, though, and thanks to plug-in hybrid technology, all kinds of scarcely credible running cost figures become possible. The GLE 500e variant I'm talking about is supposed to be able to manage almost city car style returns, 76.4 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and an equally impressive CO2 reading of 84 grams per kilometre. Now, that emissions figure is sufficient for this variant to be officially classified as an ultra-low emission vehicle, although annoyingly not quite enough to entitle exemption from the London congestion charge. Of course, much depends on how, where and when you drive. After all, if, like many people, your daily journey to work occupies a round trip of less than 10 miles, then your weekly business commute in a GLA 500e could end up being completely fuel-free, given this car's ability to travel up to 18.5 miles on electric power alone. If, on the other hand, you venture further afield in this variant and drive in a reasonably spirited manner, then our own experience suggests that it won't be any cheaper to run than the far less expensive diesel-powered GLE models, especially once you've factored in the cost of the electricity that we're using to charge the thing up. That's a process that occupies around 2 hours when connected to the wallbox charger that Mercedes can help you to acquire for your garage. At the other end of the efficiency spectrum lies the storming Mercedes-AMG GLE 63S flagship version. Now, traditionally, those who bought V8 petrol-powered Mercedes SUVs could hardly have offended Greenpeace further if they'd fitted a whaling harpoon gun to the bonnet. Now, going for the GLE 63S still won't get you a place on that organisation's Christmas card list, but this variant does manage 23.9 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 276 grams per kilometre of CO2, which isn't bad for a 585 brake horsepower sporting SUV. Those figures are better than you manage in a rival V8 supercharged Range Rover Sport, but fractionally behind the returns of BMW X6M and Porsche Cayenne Turbo competitors, although not by enough to be really significant. Residual values, well, that is an interesting one. Traditionally, Mercedes is strong here, but large luxury SUVs tend to lose a little more of their value than smaller models. This one, though, doesn't do badly at all in this regard. After the industry standard 36-month, 60,000 mile ownership period, independent experts reckon that both GLE diesel models will retain 55% of their original value. For the flagship Mercedes-AMG GLE 63S, the figure is 45%. As for insurance, well, as you might expect, that barnstorming 63S version is a top-of-the-shop Group 50, but lesser GLA variants are slightly more sensibly rated. You're looking at Group 41 or 42 for the 250D, or Group 45 or 46 for this 350D. The 450 AMG V6 petrol model is Group 47, and the 500e plug-in hybrid derivative is up at Group 49. What else? Well, we'll tell you that the comprehensive 3-year warranty is built upon by Mercedes' Mobilo scheme, which delivers breakdown cover for up to 30 years, as long as you continue to have your car serviced at a Mercedes main dealer. And it's worth knowing that your maintenance outlay can be kept a little in check by going for the optional service care package that takes care of routine maintenance, spreading the cost of regular servicing and guaranteeing the price of parts and labour for up to 4 services, and also covering the cost of all the recommended service items, such as brake fluid, spark plugs, air filters, fuel filters and screen wash. There's also an assist dashboard service indicator that monitors engine use and tells you exactly when a garage visit is due. And it's also worth mentioning that the Mercedes Me remote online services package that comes as part of that command online infotainment system includes remote self-diagnostic capability, enabling your GLE to monitor wear and tear items and to alert your local dealer to let you know if something needs seeing to. So, how to sum up this GLE? Well, first, here's what it won't do. Stride across the Gobi Desert quite like any Land Rover product, or power round Brands Hatch quite like a more sporting BMW X5. But for us, that's not a problem. Ultimately, it turns out that this car still offers more of a middle ground between these two extremes, and it's a place in which this GLE seems far more comfortable than its M-Class predecessors were. Specify it for off-road use and it'll deliver mud-plugging prowess expert enough to suit any right-minded user. Yet with Airmatic suspension fitted, it can ride like a Rolls-Royce. And if you specify the active curve system, you'll find this car cornering with accomplished sportiness. All of these things are possible from a Mercedes that shows just how far the modern luxury SUV has come, not least in its eco-friendliness. The base diesel version is at the cutting edge of what's possible in terms of efficiency from a car of this size these days. And if you choose the plug-in hybrid variant, you can go beyond that with an all-electric driving range that theoretically promises largely fuel-free commuting motoring. And overall, Well, it's true that there are sportier, more dynamic models of this kind that you could buy. But we're struggling to think of many that offer a better all-round package. Quick, capable, practical and luxurious. This is, at last, the car Mercedes always should have had in this segment.